Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. Now, today, I am looking at an excerpt from foreignaffairs.com. Foreignaffairs.com. And you're starting to see this in other Western news outlets as well. Now, why are we starting to see what I'm about to read to you popping up in the Western mainstream media? Well, we're seeing these statements, and again, I'm going to read it here momentarily, because the situation on the ground, along the front lines, in the ongoing war is incredibly challenging for the Ukrainian military right now. The Ukrainians, as we speak, have, in all probability, not been in this position before. The early stages of the conflict were much different than what happened in the middle stages, and then those stages eventually transformed into kind of where we're at now. But where we're at now is we are watching the Ukrainian armed forces essentially be destroyed. It's happening. We're witnessing it. The powers that be in Western Europe probably even have a better idea of what is happening. They understand that the summer counteroffensive, the last summer counteroffensive that the Ukrainians tried to launch south of Zaporizhia was an utter failure and has brought about a quickening of what's kind of happening now. Not to mention the change in Russian doctrine to use its massive air capabilities to destroy the Ukrainian military on the front line using these glide weapons. But specifically, the statement is as follows. Europe, but not NATO, should send troops to Ukraine. Let me read you that again. And yes, you heard that correctly. Europe, but not NATO, should send troops to Ukraine. So first and foremost, this shows you how glaringly apparent that the Western media believes that you are stupid. The Western media believes that the citizenry of the West are absolute idiots. And a lot of them are. I would say because of the indoctrination processes that happen within the school systems, especially here in the United States, history, foreign affairs is not taught. Schools are indoctrination centers for the left-wing body politic here in the United States. And that's just a fact. And kids who leave these schools, both grade schools and colleges, and enter adulthood and enter the working world, simply do not understand the world. They're sheltered, and when they read this, Europe, but not NATO, should send troops to Ukraine, they take that as face value. They don't understand that when they say what they really mean is NATO, but not NATO, should send troops to Ukraine. That's really what this says. Or it could be vice versa. It could be Europe and the United States, but not Europe and the United States, should send troops to Ukraine. 2 plus 2 equals 5. Probably this is more like 2 plus 2 equals 8. Again, this is how stupid the media believes the citizens that read their garbage is. It's incredible. Europe, but not NATO, should send troops to Ukraine. Now, there could be some legalese that comes into play here where they conduct an operation and move troops into Western Ukraine outside the purview of NATO. But look, they're going to be using the same assets, the same method of transport, the same military units that would be moved into the Ukraine for the purposes of a NATO operation are the same troops and forces and resources that would be moved into Western Ukraine for any other operation. It's all the same. They're just rebranding it. They're calling it something different. Now, does that lead to the same series of events? Maybe. Possibly. I think outside of calling it a NATO operation, they are able to change the narrative a little bit. But at the end of the day, it is going to lead to a direct conflict between those Western European forces, France, the United Kingdom, possibly Poland, the United States, that introduces forces into Western Ukraine. They are still going to, in all likelihood at some point, be attacked by Russian forces. Look, Western Europe is placing its forces into an area that is under war. There is war. And when you move your forces into a war zone with the intent of helping one side, the Ukrainians, against the Russians, there's a high likelihood that those forces supporting that one side of the war is going to be attacked at some point. But this is how they're going to do it. It is going to be a gradual introduction of forces that is going to possibly lead to an event. And again, the reason that these forces are being deployed east into the Ukraine is because of the events that are currently happening on the ground in eastern Ukraine. Again, we are slowly watching the collapse of the front lines by Russian forces, destroying the Ukrainian military on the ground. Let's take a quick look at the frontal area of operations to the north by northwest of Avdiivka. And we're going to go back essentially to the beginning of April so you, the viewer, can see exactly what is happening. So this is what is driving right now this statement. Europe, but not NATO, should send troops to the Ukraine. Here we go. Now this is a Ukrainian supported site. So this methodical drive west by Russian forces. Chasiv Yar. There is a lot of high-grade Russian combat power now positioned west of Bakhmut with the intent of seizing control eventually Chasiv Yar. I don't believe this is going to be a storming operation at this point. I still believe the Russians are perfectly happy with this fix and destroy strategy that they're using with its Air Force and the glide munitions. But here we go. And what you're seeing, and this is very important, is it's showing you how effective the Russian strategy actually is. If we watched the conflict earlier, we did not see this perpetual movement of the front line west. It was much more stagnant. And at the time, the Russians were very much focused on using conventional artillery, again, 122, 130, 152 millimeter artillery rounds. Now, what has happened is essentially very simplistic. They brought out a bigger stick. This isn't rocket science. The Russians simply decided to take the gloves off and say, we're going to use a bigger stick. We're going to put away the rattan cane, and we're going to break out the baseball bat, and we're going to beat the living shit out of you. And that is what is happening. Have a good day, everybody.